the hard-working Ayuso abandons the Tour de France just before the Pyrenees after testing positive and being very sick with COVID. And in doing so, he gives the best possible favour to Poggy, so that he doesn't have to worry about any lack of work. Bini, our Bini, makes millions of Eritreans happy with his victories, while the hair doping team jettisons cyclists and gets victories at the same time. The anchovy prepares his gregarios in the best possible way before the Tourmalet. Oh, these add up to 2 vibrant stages that we will tell you about in the best possible way. Subscribe to the channel for more, and don't forget you can also subscribe to Failed Sharks, our soccer and doping channel, where we will upload videos once again when we reach 1,000 subscribers. And now, let the show begin. Stage 12 started with an act of relative justice. The Europcar team suffered a theft of 11 of their MV bikes, valued at €14,000 each. Sweet revenge for all of us who've suffered the abusive prices of lights and gas from the Vendée sponsor company. At the same time, fear was spreading in the peloton. No, it's not that Poggy has spread his fears regarding our beloved Danish anchovy to the rest of the pack. It is that, once again, the evil COVID has come to destroy the careers of many, as is the case of the first abandonment due to this disease in the 24 Tour, coincidentally involving a Dane, because it's always a Dane. We're talking about the bald and already into pre-retirement Michael Murkoff, who, once the mummy's heist was consummated, he had little to do in this rather shameful Grand Bouclé. Although they were not the team most damaged by the strange virus that's terrorizing the multicolored snake, which, instead of riding through the streets of Aurillac, might as well be riding through the streets of Raccoon City. Now, instead, we're talking about Dr. Daniele Zaccaria's Bahrain Victorious, who were pioneers in the use of COVID tests for cyclists, but they couldn't casually detect any viral diseases, something recognized by the doped Slovenian director, Gorazd Stangel, on the day in which his British rider, Fred Wright, the same one who astonished the world in the histrionic Bahrain squad of Colbrelli's heart disease infamy, he arrived out of control at the finish line. According to Fred, it was the worst day of his life as a professional cyclist. The next day, these damned viral diseases seemed to be just affecting riders suitable for the mid-mountain stages that were taking place. Pello Bilbao, the Basque ombudsman who finished 6th in the 23 Tour, was left behind every time the peloton climbed the slightest hill, and he ended up abandoning, exhausted, without strength, after having crossed the finish line 33 minutes behind the winning anchovy, along with the mummy of man and the disheartening Fabio Jakobsen, another who abandoned pitifully on stage 12. Such are the viruses that only affect some of Dr. Zaccaria's riders, such as Wright, or Bilbao, or Mohoric, or Haig, with others, like Buitrago or Bauhaus, 9th on stage 12, have no problem being at their normal level of form. It's normal now that Vingegaard, the man who moved 7 watts per kilo on the Col du Perthus for almost a quarter of an hour, the only one of the great riders of this tour who has not acknowledged having COVID recently, is totally frightened by the possibility of one of these viruses triggering his already anomalous performance. We imagine that popular ice baths will be serving to lower the possible fevers for these poor cyclists. Although, speaking of anomalous performances, we can't help but be astonished and perplexed by the crazy following that the Tour de France is enjoying in Eritrea, all thanks to the histrionic performances of Bini, our dearest Biniam Girmay. He's won again, you know. That's 3 stages already in this Grand Bouclé. This practically assures the green jersey for him, unless there's a strange virus or a terrible fall. Our friends from Asmara know perfectly well how their national hero has made an ideal preparation in their country, where, of course, everything is perfectly controlled by the UCI commissioners, who, as we know, thanks to Selfie Le Patient, they're delighted that African cyclists are appearing on the map so that they can take commissions at the celebration of the World Championships, as well as overseeing the creation of high-performance centres, or, well, really any excuse to fill their already powerful pockets. The Bini effect is very similar to the Lance effect among the populace. So I can confidently predict that you will see the Continuum sports rider raise his arms very often. one of the shadiest organisations in world cycling, has just found its goose that lays so many golden eggs. Now true, the one who deserved to win but was hurt by the newly appeared Demar and the Mummy of Man, who was sanctioned for his continuous aggressive moves, without ever being criticised by his friend, the meme Adam Hansen, well, we're talking about the Belgian bot, proving that the Rabobank ketones have hit the carburettor very, very effectively. After the rest day, of course, and we will now have to be attentive to these changes in performance of the Belgian multi-tool. Unfortunately for everyone, the misfortune of the day once again affected the Slovenian skier. He's becoming too used to crashes, and when it happens so often, it can't be a coincidence. Although this time it was the former Ferrari customer, Alexei Lutsenko, who caused the fall of number 81 on a dangerous section of road 12 kilometers from the finish, with a low curb in the middle of some rough surfaces where the peloton should never have passed. Piccolo's friend, the American Indian Paulus, fractured his wrist. But it was Roglic who lost his chances of a podium when he arrived with his team 2.5 minutes behind the pack. And that was not the worst of it. After being examined by the Red Bull team doctors, the skier had to abandon the Tour de France, and with it his dream of climbing on the podium in Nice at 34 years of age. And unless Poggi receives a strange sanction in the future, Primož will never win this race. But look, he doesn't need to, and we're sure that we'll see him at the Vuelta a España, performing once again at the top of his game. Just in case, his team are already covering their backs with ever-increasing rumours that they may sign Focus in Evenepoel on the cheap for next season. We'll have to see how the old Belgian alcoholic takes that one. 3 more riders came out of control. There was Astana's Kazakh, Fedorov, doing a tribute to Michele Gazzoli, and 2 men from the hair doping team, Denmark's Krag Andersen and Belgium's Rijkaard, possibly also affected by that much maligned virus that the next day would change the fate and direction of the race. Stage 13 began with some shameful statements by Thierry Gouvenou, former cyclist of teams of the always clean but occasionally doped Roger Leger, and a current member of Omari Sports, the company that wants to destroy our channel for including 3 seconds of images of the Mummy of Man changing a wheel. The company that allows riders to enjoy a siesta on 5 stages of the Tour de France. This guy insisted that it cost 100,000 euros to change that curb on the road. Well, Thierry, maybe you should reduce your salary if you're going to say such stupid things on camera. Let the people who defend credible cycling do their work and, well, close your mouth. Just a little is getting ridiculous. Also, there was news involving much more interesting people, much more succulent riders, such as Juan Ayuso. He was justifying his negligible amount of work for his leader alien, for he has contracted COVID, since he had tested positive in a private test performed by Dracula Gianetti, which no doubt involved sucking his blood. What a coincidence that the guy who lived for weeks with COVID patient Poggi didn't end up infected, and it's only now that he started suffering from the disease. It didn't matter because Ayuso said he felt very well, but the reality was very different. And he was not the only one. There was his compatriot, Jesus Herrada. He retired sick, as did his teammates in Cofidis, Izagirre and Reynard 2 days ago. Poor guys. The Saunier Duval team, now without the burden of the hard-working Ayuso, finally employed a good tactic. They included Adam Yates, 8 minutes behind the yellow jersey on the GC, in a stage where they went out at full speed and with a strong tailwind. And they were there in the first group of escapees. This put the Rabobank team to work with a much-improved Belgian bot, blowing the peloton to pieces. And they left the hard-working Ayuso, who was feeling so good despite having contracted COVID, well, he was left completely stranded. In less than 10 minutes, number 13 anonymously abandoned the Tour de France and probably signed up for the Vuelta with Roglic in a bid to conquer the Spanish round. The first positive for Moonlight Machin's team in a stage which literally flew. In fact, several riders who were supposedly injured or having a very bad time included Indian Paulus or Mr. Drop-a-Seat Post Mohoric. They got into a breakaway with Philipsen's Gregario, the world champion, and Kerry Lascano, or the former Ferrari client, Jakob Fuglsang. All the teams wanted to include men in the breakaway, and that meant that no one could increase the gap by more than 2 minutes. The insane pace of the Alien and Focusing or the Anchovy doing turns at full speed, they tore the peloton apart, leaving the mummy of man stranded in an absolutely memorable stage. After many breakaway attempts, a peloton of less than 50 riders would play out for the victory. And even so, there was no clean sprint. There was a totally avoidable crash of Omery Capio and Arnaud Delis. And at least we got to witness another beautiful sprint, where Philipsen from the hair doping team overtook a Belgian bot, who again finished second. A clear progression of this rider who will be key in the remaining mountain stages. Biniam could not even fight for the win this time. This is the cycling we have to enjoy. But still, while 2 Gregarios abandon, the leader wins 2 stages. This hair-doping business is a funny old game, dear friends. But that's the price we all have to pay.